Ready? Let's go. Hello, Bardown Beauties, presented by sodastick.com. We are back for episode 3, coming to you live from Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. Alexis, how we feeling?
I do have a bit of a headache, but I'm feeling okay. This is a pretty cool place to do our first, and yes, I'm going to say first live recording because there better be more of these because this is way fun than sitting in Fred's kitchen. No offense.
Yeah, no offense. We've moved around quite a bit, but I like this. It's got a nice hockey ambience. Yeah. We're working on finding a good spot for our Bardown Beauties photo, I think. Maybe take some of these North Star jerseys down. I don't know. There's a Gretzky one. I think we could remove that.
I want to be by Tom's jersey, which is kind of, well, that's also by Crosby, but, you know.
Or Tom's pants, which we found out in the back room. There are a pair of Tom Reed's hockey pants signed by his North Star team.
Imagine being so cool. They hang your pants on the wall. Like,
it's pretty amazing. I love it. But no, thank you so much to Mr. Tom Reed for letting us come in here and host another big episode on tap. We had Kevin Gorg join us. Love us some Papa Gorg.
Yeah, that guy can talk for hours. We got to have him back because
he did talk almost for hours.
Well, and he's got good stories.
Yes.
So trust me when I say like that part of the show you're going to want to listen to. And I can't wait to have him back because every time I'm with him, he just has the best stories ever because he knows so many people and he does so much that it's just like he has all the stories.
And he's just so great at telling the stories. Yes. I mean, I will listen to him for hours on end.
We need to start videotaping this stuff because if you could have seen Kevin talking, like Kevin is so emphatic when he talks.
Guy.
He is. Yeah. He's such a TV guy. So we gotta, next time he's on, hopefully we have those capabilities because I want people to see him talk because it's the best.
It is. So he will be our hot guest this weekend this episode. Where are we? What day is it?
You're listening on Monday, probably. It's Friday.
I think. Yeah.
See, that's part of this job. I never know what day it is. I'm like, we're doing stuff on Saturdays, Sundays, Monday nights, Tuesday mornings.
Usually we have our shit together, though. I swear.
Okay, maybe you. Don't lump me in with people who know what's going on because I don't know.
Well, let's jump right into it, though. Our hockey topic of the week, the coaching carousel. Another NHL coach out with Peter Laviolette in Nashville, but they made a quick hire with John Hines, who was let go from the New Jersey Devils, I don't know, a month ago maybe?
I am so confused. And I know everyone on Twitter was confused because like sometimes I see stuff and I'm like, I'm not going to put my hot take out there because I don't want people to roast me. And then I like saw other people saying it. I was like, okay, so I am on the same page as everyone. This is just as strange to everyone else as it was to me. I'm not surprised Laviolette got fired because especially in the Central Division, I would say the Preds are the team that's underperformed the most.
Right.
The Wild are kind of in the spot people expected. The Blackhawks, not playing or not having that great of a season, but again, not super surprising. And then you've got Dallas, Colorado. You've got them playing well, and you've got Winnipeg and you've just got the Preds, kind of hanging around.
With a bunch of talent.
That's
there.
The thing.
You said, they're underperforming 100%.
And it's sad because Laviolette is a good coach, and I know he loved coaching in Nashville. And it's tough, especially in the middle of the season, to lose your coach like that. And I'm thinking, okay, you've got other people out there who are good hires. Babcock was let go. You've got a lot of coaching changes that have happened in the season, and there's good options out there. And the fact that they just so quickly hired Hines, I was like, why him? And maybe it'll be a good fit. You never know, because some coaches just are with the wrong team or in the wrong city and they get matched up with a different team and all of a sudden they're having a great season. It just seemed weird to me because I would have liked to see them just have an interim coach for the rest of the season.
Sure.
See where they finish. Maybe they can sneak into a playoff spot, but it's tough in the Central Division, so you never know. But the fact that they so quickly put him on board, we'll see what he does. I know that when he was fired from New Jersey, that was kind of like the least surprising
right.
of the firings that have happened this year so far. It was kind of like, yeah, well, that makes sense. And I don't know. He had talent in New Jersey and couldn't get it done. And then you bring him to the Preds, who also clearly have talent, and the expectations are going to be a lot higher in Nashville than they were in New Jersey, just because of how they've played in previous seasons leading up to now. Right. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Well, especially for general manager David Pohl to make this change in the middle of the season. This is just the third coach in Nashville franchise history. So it's very unprecedented of him to make such an abrupt change. I know in his press conference he did say it wasn't necessarily Lavi's fault. It was
Right.
on the players, which
Yeah.
is
And
true.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think him and Hines have a little bit of a relationship back with some USA hockey stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And I don't think Laviolette will be available for, without a job for very long. I think you'll see him behind the bench. One thing I had tweeted out, which got some interesting reactions, was, keep an eye. Bruce Boudreau's contract is up at the end of this year. And I love me some Bruce.
Me
Do
too.
not get me wrong. I think he's a fantastic coach. He's an even better human being.
Yeah.
Love interacting with him every single day with this team. But the fact of the matter is he's not Bill Guerin's guy.
Yeah.
Bill adopted him when he took over this team. And the realistic matter is a GM likes to have his guy in there, and Bruce's contract will be up at the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Lavi's a USA hockey guy. Bill Guerin's a USA hockey guy. You got Mike Modano, USA. Maybe it's a good old American,
I love it.
feel.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he's one of the guys considered to take over this next Wild team.
Well, and I know at the beginning of the season, Wild fans and hockey fans in general were very adamant that Bruce was going to be gone at the end of the season because the expectations for the Wild were very low. And the first, 6-7 games of the season, they were exactly performing as everyone expected them to, which as a Wild fan is frustrating. As a member of the media for the Wild is sad to see because you want the team you're working for to do well, right? It's more fun when they're winning. Right. It's more fun to be in the locker room when they're winning. It's more fun to be around the coaches and players. And I think at that point, everyone was like, Bruce is going to be gone at the end of the year. His contract's up. There's no way that they're going to renew it. And the way the Wild have performed in the playoffs, they're like, even if they make the playoffs, what are the odds they even make it out of the first round?
Sure.
Well, then they go on that streak and everyone's like, all right, everyone's happy again.
We're in
and
this.
Yeah, everything's fine. Bruce is fine. Players are fine. And now they've kind of hit a bit of a lull again. And I think that if the Wild do make the playoffs, which to me, they always have been and still up until this point in the season are a bubble team. I would not be surprised either way if the Wild make the playoffs, don't make the playoffs. If they can get into the playoffs, I still don't think that's enough for Bruce's job to be secured and have his contract, renewed. They have to do something in the playoffs. They either have to beat a really good team, which once you get to the playoffs, they're all really good teams, or you have to make some kind of run because Wild fans are sick of seeing their team make it to the playoffs or have these incredible regular seasons just to lay an egg, come playoff time. And I think they need to turn that around here in order for Bruce to have a chance at staying. And I would hate to see him go. Like you said, great person, great coach. The players respect him. The fans respect him. They're just Minnesota fans get angry easy because they want to see their team win because they care so much, which is a good thing. But it would be tough to see him go. But you know what? Sometimes those changes do need to be made. And
it's a business. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it shakes out. Bruce knows that better than anybody. That wouldn't be his first time that he'd moved on from a team. So, but again, we'll see what happens. We won't know. I don't see that. Yeah. I don't predict Bill Guerin doing anything during the middle of the season by any means. And
we talked about before we were recording too. We were kind of talking. We had lunch here at Tom Reed's before we started recording, so we've been chatting.
We
for
love
a little
Tom
while
Reed's.
now, yes. And you and Kevin were kind of talking about how Bill Guerin has been really patient this year. There were several points throughout the year where he could have made big changes, whether that be a trade or, firing Bruce or re-signing Bruce, whatever it may be. There was points in the season where he could have done something. And I think Wild fans get nervous because we're used to GMs who are going to do that. And Bill Guerin has been more patient than what Wild fans are used to seeing in the past, 4 or 5 years, whatever you want to call it. And it'll be interesting to see how he handles the rest of the season and what the Wild give him to work with, because he seems to be a very well-respected GM among the Wild in this community, and I'm excited to see what he does because I think Wild fans might be surprised. I don't think, it's hard to read what he might do.
He's a player. I mean, people have to remember he's a guy that has played. He has
he's
won the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
I mean, he doesn't like to lose, just like anybody involved in the game doesn't want to lose.
Yeah.
I think you're right. He, like we said, he's been very patient with this team, and I think he's really wants to make sure he does his due diligence in assessing everything that is here and looking at the potential. And he's a great guy, and I think he's putting faith in Bruce. There isn't, and I should make this clear, there has in no way been any indication, at least from my end, or Alexis, I don't know if you've heard anything either, that he wants to get rid of Bruce at the end of the year.
We're just talking about what people are talking about.
Yes, exactly. There is. This is not some insider scoop that Bruce is out. I mean, again, we hope that he gets to come back and see that. But good conversation. Beauties, we want to know what you think. Do you want to see not Bill? Do you want to see Bruce continue to lead this team to Cup Promised Land? Who would you want to replace him with? Maybe.
Yeah.
Send us a tweet. Send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. We'll talk a little bit more about Bruce in our next segment with guest Kevin Gorg. Not hockey related, though. Some good conversation, so stick around.
We want to remind listeners about all the awesome things our presenting sponsor, Soda Stick, has going on. So they recently partnered up with the Minnesota Wild and the Herb Brooks Foundation for a special ticket package offer. The special offer includes a ticket to the Wild Blue Jackets game on Tuesday, February 25th at 7 p.m., a meet and greet opportunity to take pictures with members from the 1980 U.S. gold medal Olympic team, your choice of a Soda Stick USA custom design hat, pre-game on-ice photo, and a chance to win raffle prizes. Whew, that was a lot. A portion of each ticket will also be donated to the Herb Brooks Foundation. Herb Brooks Foundation's mission is introducing, providing, and maintaining a variety of hockey-related opportunities at no cost for youth while growing the game. For more information, make sure you visit sodastick.com, and if you see anything you like on there, use our code Bardown Beauties for free shipping.
Joining us now, Fox Sports North reporter and analyst and father to Alexis in a pseudo crazy cute way, Mr. Kevin Gorg. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. If 3 daughters weren't enough to worry about, I've added a 4th.
And I'm his favorite, right?
Without a doubt right now, because you run the business of the Gorg's Power Plays tip sheet out at Canterbury every summer. You've done an awesome job. So, yes, she is my 4th daughter.
I'll be expecting a late Christmas gift soon then.
What's in the mail?
Exactly. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Kevin, of Burnsville.
God's country,
fame.
indeed.
Yes,
absolutely.
Talk about your goaltending career back in the day.
Man, we're going a long way back in the time machine. But, you know, I grew up in the Burnsville area. I was lucky enough to play high school hockey at a time when Burnsville had a huge enrollment. We had a ton of students, over 900 in my 85 graduating class. And with that came some great success with some of our sports teams. Our football team ended up losing in the championship game that fall. And then our hockey team was good all the way through. When we were Pee-wees and Bantams, we were together. Tom Osiki, legendary high school coach. His son, Mark, was one of our defensemen. And we knew we'd be good. But to be the number 1 team in the preseason, to be ranked number 1 all year, to have that bullseye kind of on your back, and then to see it kind of fall into place where Burnsville had never won a championship. We had been to the tournament, but had been beat in the final a couple years prior. And then to get to the championship game, to avenge that loss to Hill Murray in 85, and to be the goaltender on that team with all my best buddies growing up that we had played together since we were 6 or 7. It's funny, I tell other high school teams and college teams when I talk to them that there isn't a day that's gone by. I'm 52 years old right now, and this was when I was 18.
52 years young.
Correct. Young at heart. There isn't a day that's gone by, you guys, where just one moment, whether it's a song on the radio. Last night, got back from the long road trip to Calgary, land about 3:30 in the morning, and I hear Queen, We Are the Champions on my drive home. But for that 2 minutes, I'm thinking of my buddies, right? I'm thinking of that moment in time, and that's what a championship can do. You don't think about it often, but you think about it enough where you smile just a little bit each day.
And
by the way, if you haven't seen the post-game interview of Kevin on the ice.
Good Lord, that is epic.
You definitely need to see it.
The guys at Canterbury have the footage, and Tom Hanneman, who's my coworker now at FSN, is interviewing me, and I'll give you the visual, and I'll make an ass of myself doing it, but one of the cheerleaders, while I'm doing the interview with Tom Hanneman, right after the game, in my goalie gear, on the ice, hands me a Cabbage Patch doll, and I always talk with my hands like I'm doing right now, Jessi.
Yes.
Almost hit you in the face. Sorry, Alexis. But the Cabbage Patch doll, it's
a great interview.
Just go watch it. I can't put the
so
words
good.
to it, but it's very embarrassing. It's a Cabbage Patch doll.
We'll be sure to share that link and let people take
Terrific.
Or just come out to Canterbury because they will play
They
it.
play it all the time out there because they know it bothers me. Good for
But
them.
we love it, Kevin.
It's all that matters. It's all that matters.
You know, you talk about just how special that was, and again, playing with your friends from youth all the way up through high school, which is something so unique to Minnesota and what makes Minnesota special. Another thing that makes it special here, Hockey Day Minnesota, which we have on tap coming up Saturday. Tell us a little bit about how excited you are to be a part of that and all the work that goes in from the FSN perspective.
Yeah, it's our 14th year, and I think when you talk to the coaches and the players that have done this, and even the ones, we just had our conference call with the coaches for this year's event last week, and this is one of those standalone events that's almost like a dress rehearsal to a state tournament. So coaches and players love the idea of being a part of this big day because it's become a Minnesota tradition and it's become really a Minnesota holiday. I mean, people have parties all over the state.
It's my favorite day of the year.
It's so
It
much
is a
fun.
holiday.
Yeah.
And for all of us at FSN, it is our favorite day because it's the only thing we do. You know, we've got Wolves, we've got Twins, we've got Gophers, we've got Wild, we've got some Vikings material. But this is the one day where everybody, and I mean everybody in the office, has their fingerprint on this day. There's been months of preparation, all this work that's gone into it. Everybody all pulling together to see if this one day can come off. And really, it's a spotlight of the game of hockey for certain. But what it always comes back to for me is it's a spotlight on the city that is hosting.
Yes.
And Minneapolis, I think, is going to do an awesome job. You're going to have the backdrop of the city line, which is just the sight line is going to be gorgeous at Parade Stadium. But I think about Grand Rapids. I think about Baudette Bay. I think about Hankey Pit over in Elk River. And looking back now, every city finds a way to get the magic of Hockey Day conveyed through our broadcast. And it's an awesome event to be a part of.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
as fans of it for so long, I know Alexis and I, we talk about it all the time. Like,
Yeah.
oh, what are you doing for Hockey Day? Oh, we're doing this, that.
It is. It's like when you're like, where are you going for Christmas? It's like, where are you going for Hockey Day? Whose ice rink are you going to be at? Are they going to have beer there? Like, are we going to be playing pickup games? Like,
Yes.
I know when I was a kid, I remember because obviously the broadcast starts early in the morning, right? And
9
so I
a.m.
remember I'd always wake up early. It was like Christmas morning, and I would set up like a little card table in my living room, and I would have so when I was little, I would like write journals about every Wild game. So like if I was angry, I'd write about like what made me mad.
Get those feelings
Yeah,
out there.
right.
When I was
exactly.
excited, I was writing about today was such a great game. They had a comeback win. I could recite to you like at what point in the game goals were scored, like the exact timestamp. And I remember I would have all my journals on this table throughout Hockey Day, and I would just
your
have
own
the
little reporting station.
And I was just writing and taking notes and like watching all the stuff going on and the like Hockey Day music that we only get to hear once a year. You know, like all of that stuff. Growing up was like it's still the coolest thing. And now that I'm in this career and get to actually be a part, I was interning at FSN when it was in St. Cloud, which is where I went to school. So that was such a fun day. I got to work that, and now working for the Wild and being a part of those Hockey Day games. It's the best day of the year. I wish we could do it more because I love it, but part of what makes it so fun is that it only comes once a year.
And I don't think the Wild and FSN way back in 2007 when this thing started had any idea what it was going to be. It's fun. You look back at that first year and it had some of the same feels that we have now, but it has grown. And it seems like every year the next city takes it upon itself to make it bigger and better. And, this year's event is now a 3-day deal where you've got games Thursday night. You've got that really cool doubleheader on Friday night with the Women's All-Star game and the NHL Alumni game. And then you've got that traditional Saturday 9 a.m. to darn near midnight where you've got all this great programming, all this incredible action outdoors, the Wild game. It's become something I don't think anybody had any idea. And that's the type of event that is special because somebody somewhere thought of this. I don't know who that person is.
Thank you, whoever it was.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much because honestly, every year it gets bigger and better. And I'm like a kid right now counting down to Christmas because you mentioned it, Alexis. It is that day for me. And for all of us that work at FSN where you just can't wait to get there and see how it plays out. We've done it so many times now that it's a lot of the same people at the core of this thing. Right. So we know it's going to be good. We just want to see how it's going to be different this year in a big city like Minneapolis compared to some of the smaller cities we've done it in, like last year in Bemidji, who just nailed it. I mean, they couldn't have done a better job.
So cold, but so perfect, right?
It was, if you're going to go to Bemidji in the middle of winter, that's what you want. You want 30 below. And what I was amazed by is the weather didn't slow down any of the crowds.
Yeah.
Every event outdoors, that place was packed on Lake Bemidji because that's who they are. And it brought out who Bemidji is, what makes that such a great hockey town. And to me, that's what Hockey Day is all about.
And it's spawned other hockey days. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, but Hockey Day Lakeville is now a thing. Hockey Day Minnetonka. I mean, obviously nothing that interferes with the official Hockey Day Minnesota, but I mean, just how amazing is that to know, like you said, you couldn't envision in 2007 that it was going to take on this life, but it really has.
My sister Kelly lives in Farmington, and my nephew Tommy plays Pee Wee hockey out there. And for them, they have their own version of a Hockey Day because as Alexis pointed out earlier, it's the holiday on the calendar where it's acceptable to either be at the rink, be having some beers, be at a fire pit, where you can literally get away with watching hockey or playing hockey all morning, all afternoon, and all night. It's the only day you can do that. And in Minnesota, why would you not want a day where we celebrate the game that makes us different? Our state tournament, our culture, our families, boys, girls, moms, dad, uncles, aunts, they all grew up with the game. Now we have that one day where you can sit around telling stories about your team, about your family, because it all ties back to one thing. When you live in Minnesota, one way or the other, you're connected to this game. It brings us all together, and this day, to me, brings out all the great that hockey can bring for everybody else, because all the stories behind the scenes, Marnie Gellner does a lot of our stories, Tom Hanneman, those to me are the fabric of Hockey Day, because you get to see just how entrenched we are as a people. And you hear the stories like last night during our Wild broadcast of Matt Dumba getting involved to raise money for those terrible victims of the fires in Australia. Hockey Day brings out so many good stories like that one, and we all can identify because we all take care of each other in the world of hockey. It's a small circle, and you guys now with Bardown Beauties are getting a little taste of this, because all of a sudden people are reaching out to you two that want to be a part of this show, because we're all connected by this great game of hockey, and we all do different things, but we all have the same thing in common. We love being at the rink, and we love watching hockey.
Well, and I think another thing that I think is so cool about Hockey Day is now that it's been going on for, 10 plus years, we now have certain things where we can be like, hey, remember Hockey Day 5 years ago when this cool thing happened? Or how they do like the temperatures of every hockey day and talk about the coldest one and the warmest one and like all those different things is so cool. And I know, for you you've been doing this every single hockey day so far. And I know you guys have had some cold ones. Baudette was, I think, the coldest, right?
Well, we had to shut down. Baudette Bay was the second year. So in 2008, we're outdoors. It's negative 55 wind chill.
Yeah.
And so we plan on doing the outdoor games. And let's not forget that Blaine is up there to play Roseau. Now, this is two of the top 5 teams in AA hockey. And we get a phone call that morning from the coaching staff at Roseau. This is Roseau, Minnesota. This is as hockey and as cold as it gets, saying, are we going to be able to play? We're not sure we want to put our kids outdoors in this weather. We're like, listen, this broadcast, for the most part, revolves around you guys showing up. You will be here. We're not moving it indoors, and we are playing. Now, thank God we did, because in that game, Nick Bukestad is on Blaine.
Yeah.
Ness is a defenseman for Roseau. You've got these NHL players wandering around out there. It's a 1-0 classic hockey game in the elements. But we're going to be out there all night doing hits during the Wild game, which starts at 8 o'clock. They had to send the crew home because our camera lenses were freezing. It's 55 below, and that was the legendary now drive home, where it's LaPanta in the passenger seat, me driving my minivan, and Dusty Peterson, who now does so many different things at wild.com, but if you've watched Becoming Wild, he's the guy that runs that show. He's in the back, and we're driving home because we got sent home. We're done, and we wanted to get home to see our kids, so LaPanta and I, we're driving the night. Let's go. We'll have the Gopher game on the radio. We'll listen to the Wild game, and we'll get home. And so as we're leaving Baudette Bay, there's a town called Black Duck, about 30 minutes outside of Baudette, and there's nothing there. There's no lights. It's single-lane highway, and the snow had blown into the middle of the road. We're going like 55, 60 miles an hour, and it's like seeing a deer. You have 2 or 3 seconds to react. Well, we hit this drift, and my van gets pulled sharply to the right down an embankment, and we roll 7 or 8 times into the middle of a cornfield. Now, we survived the roll, which is shocking enough. But now we're in the middle of a cornfield in Black Duck, and there's nothing around. Thank God. A car came up 5 minutes later, and we're out there because we had taken all our gear off.
Right.
We're in sweatshirts, jeans, and socks, and we're like waving this car down. They call the cops. They show up. The sheriff car pulls up, and they get out, and they're like, hey, it's Gorg and LaPanta. We just got done watching you guys on Hockey Day,
Minnesota.
Tow truck comes, and so we're going to tow the van back to the Twin Cities here to get it looked at. It's probably going to be totaled, but we're going to do it anyway. 4 grown men, the driver of the tow truck, LaPanta, me, and Dusty. There's no back seat in this tow truck. There's only a front seat. And the tow truck with the van in the back can't exceed 35 miles an hour. We get in that tow truck at roughly, midnight. 10 hours later, 4 grown men in the front of this tow truck. We arrive to drop my vehicle off. at the place that's going to kind of assess it at the body shop. Now, mind you, we're making a 7-hour drive home, and so I've got Swedish Fish, I've got Sour Patch Kids, I've got gummy bears. Well, when the thing rolls, our bags are in there, the candy's in there, and it turns into a blender. So the car gets dropped off. Later that day, LaPanta comes back because he can't find his cell phone. It's lost in the shuffle. He gets there, it's all frozen, and it looks like a gingerbread house. All the debris, including the candy, is frozen to the inside of this van because the windows were obviously smashed.
Oh, goodness.
We survived, but it's one of those
okay.
hockey day stories, year 2, and this is back in 2008, that every time we get back together, hey, you remember the year? So to your point, yes, we do.
How do you guys, I mean, that's a long day either way, no matter how you shake it. I mean, how do you guys get through from the broadcast standpoint, all of you? I mean, you're up early. Is it the adrenaline and you're feeding off the crowd and the excitement? Great.
You get so hyped up for the day, and we show up usually around 7 o'clock in the morning to have our first couple production meetings. We hit the air at 9 o'clock. We've got kind of a half an hour to kind of tee up the first outdoor game. And, as the day progresses, a lot of times you're doing 2 or 3 games on location at the outdoor facility, and you're just loving it, right? I mean, the people are going nuts. The crowds are big. You're seeing the way the setting, because you've seen it kind of come together as they've built it, and you're there the day before, and it's empty and it's quiet. But then when you see the day come together, the adrenaline you get from watching the crowds and the atmosphere, you feed off of that. Where it hits you is a lot of times, including this year, I'll be back in St. Paul at the Xcel Energy Center to work sidelines for the Wild game. Not during the game because you're still in the moment, right? And you're still telling the story of Hockey Day, but right towards the end of that game, when you've kind of been at work since 7 a.m., now it's 11 at night, and as I've mentioned earlier, I'm no spring chicken. You start to feel the effects. The next day, you're smiling the whole day if it goes well, because like I've mentioned, this has been going on for months for a lot of people at our station, and you feel really proud that you were able to put a product out there that shows off the community that worked so hard to make this day happen. And then the kids, you're around these players that have family all over the country that can watch this and don't normally get to see their grandson or their nephew play. And it makes you feel really good about what you're doing. And God willing, we get the right weather, and we have a couple of great high school games, an awesome women's college game over there this year with the events around it. I know it's going to be well supported. It's Minneapolis. It's a beautiful setting. And so, we're really, really right now nervous to make sure everything's kind of in its place and just excited to get over there and have this thing play out.
And hope for some Hockey Day magic for the Wild, too. I know there's been some success there, right? With some
good
goals.
And when you bring up the magic, it takes me to Elk River when Hanky Pit was so cool. It was such a perfect place to have Hockey Day. The stories just told themselves. It just played out all day long. And then Nate Prosser, who scores a goal as often as the sun eclipses. What are the odds of the Elk River guy scoring the overtime winner that night of Hockey Day? If you don't get goosebumps just thinking about that, then you don't understand what this day is all about. And couldn't happen to a better guy.
Yeah.
You talk about quality human beings. Nate Prosser fits that mold.
100%.
Well, and you just touched on, how that's a cool story that the Elk River guy scores the game-winning goal on the day it's in Elk River. What has been your favorite Hockey Day story? I know it's probably hard to pick. You could probably pick 10 from every single year, but is there like an interview that stood out? And maybe I'm a little crazy, but I think sometimes the coldest ones are the most fun to watch, and maybe being a part of it, you're like, I just, want to be warm, but that's like true Minnesotan stuff right there, right? I mean, is there any like fun, you talked about the Baudette, car roll, but is there...
I'm trying to forget that, even though the story just keeps coming back and repeating itself.
Haunting you.
For me, Lake Pekegama in Grand Rapids, whipping wind. I mean, cold, just whipping wind. And Grand Rapids, to me, is such a great hockey city, right? I mean, this is a traditional. When I grew up, everybody talked about the Halloween machine, right? This was the black and orange. Grand Rapids coming to the tournament, late 70s, early 80s. There was a goaltender named Jim Jetlin, who was a legendary high school goalie. I was lucky enough to coach his daughter, Katie, at St. Thomas when I was the women's coach for the Tommies. Anyway, that city just gets Hockey Day. And so to play it on the lake, Benilde St. Margaret's top-ranked team out there playing a 4-3 hockey game that went back and forth all afternoon. It was so cold. And it was so much fun the way Grand Rapids supported, and they were so proud of the way their kids responded, because they're that smaller town where the kids grow up playing outdoors. They're playing this city power, private school, probably less outdoor hockey for the kids from Benil, no doubt about it. And then the way the game played out, just an incredibly good hockey game. If I had to pick one, maybe that's the one, but they're all so good. The only one that was disappointing for all of us was the one in Minnetonka, where this is before refrigerated ice, where the elements didn't allow us to be outside. It was still a fun day, and the kids were still on that stage. And I live in Minnetonka now, and I can tell you what a great hockey town Minnetonka is. Won the state a couple years ago. Goldsworthy, the son of the legendary North Star, is the head coach. It just didn't play out that day the way we wanted it to. But every year is unique. Every year is different. It's hard to pick just one because there are so many great days. I thought last year Bemidji nailed it. I thought Duluth was great. I thought your one in St. Cloud on Lake George was spectacular. The crowds, they were the first. St. Cloud was the first one to really incorporate a little kind of a downtown area with the fire pits and the food trucks and the music. They were the first one to kind of elevate that to a different level. So I'll be curious to see, because Bemidji kind of piggybacks.
Minneapolis could do that.
Minneapolis has the space, has the location, and has the volume of people in that area where this could play out the same way. But I really thought St. Cloud was the first city to take that to the next level and to see how that whole area, after we got done, both on Friday night and on Saturday, how that area just kind of took over as the place to be with the music and the concert and the drinks. And it was really a really cool thing.
I mean, can't overlook the matchups, too. How did they look on Saturday? What are your thoughts on the teams that are participating this year?
We were hoping to see an undefeated number 1 ranked Warroad team.
Right.
What a game last night with their arch rivals from Roseau, where they lost a 5-4 game when they blew a 3-goal lead. They're a powerhouse. I mean, we were looking at some of the stats. Their power play's clicking at over 42%. They had a 5-game winning streak into the game last night where they had scored, I think, close to 60 goals. They're a really good team.
Could you
so
imagine
Minneapolis, they're going to have their hands full. Joe Diedzik, former Gopher, former Mr. Hockey, terrific coach. Minneapolis is going to have to try to slow things down. I think the outdoor ice may play into their hands a little bit, but Warroad is going to be as good a team as there is on either side of the classes, A or AA. And, Roseau's a top-ranked AA team, and they lost by 1 goal last night in Roseau's barn. Had a 3-goal lead. We know how good they are, so that's going to be terrific. Blake and Blaine is probably going to be as good a hockey game as we've had on Hockey Day. Both these teams are ranked. Both these teams, I think, are going to be right in the mix when it comes to winning their sections. Blake's in a brutally tough section, but they both have a legitimate chance to get to the tournament, and they're evenly matched. These are both teams that have similar skill on both sides. Which team can adapt to the outdoor venue? Which team can get a lead and maybe ride a hot goaltender? So those 2 high school games are terrific. People have been clamoring for Brad Frost and the Lady Gophers on Hockey Day for a long time, and rightfully so. This program has been elite. This program has been dominant. He is such a good coach and such a good person. So to showcase Gopher women's hockey with that talent level, middle of the afternoon when the sun's setting around 4:30, conference game against Ohio State. They've got a Minnesota connection or 2 on their roster. I'm really excited to see how that plays out. It's going to be an awesome 3 games. And I think the venue will be a part of the story, but the quality of play, you guys, I think is going to stand out this year. We've got 3 great games.
Now, Kevin, you have done it all in the hockey world. You played, illustrious career, hung up the skates on that.
Illustrious career that ended at the D3 level, but yeah, I've done it all.
Then you coached.
I did coach.
And then you transitioned into TV, which you didn't even major in broadcast journalism in school. You got a good story about this. Tell us about how you ended up in TV and with Fox Sports North.
Okay, so I, for years, was going to go into teaching and coaching. Tom Osiki, the high school coach I mentioned, was my mentor. He was my idol. I wanted to be a coach. So I started out coaching boys high school hockey, mid-'90s to late 90s, got hired as the first women's coach at St. Thomas. So in 98, I get hired to coach the Lady Tommies, and it was an amazingly great opportunity that kind of fell into my lap. So I'm loving that. But along the way, I had met Anthony LaPanta, and this goes back to when I was the boys coach at Mounds View. So we're in the mid to late 90s. I'm coaching the Mounds View boys team. Mike Schwartz is coaching the White Bear Lake team, and terrific coach himself. And so we're playing in a section quarterfinal game at Aldrich Arena. We had swept White Bear in the regular season. We were, for Mounds View, it was probably one of the better teams they had in that era. And we were the small favorite to beat White Bear in this quarterfinal. LaPanta comes to practice that week and says, whoever wins the game, congratulations. But the losing coach, I need to join me in the booth. We're going to be doing KBL, local cable hockey, of all the sectional games throughout the Twin Cities from now until the state tournament. So if you lose, that's your your silver lining or your prize. So we go out, we outshoot White Bear Lake, something like 42-20. We lose a 3-2 game where the winning goal was scored from just outside our blue line, where it went off the back dasher, hit our goalie in the back, and trickled in the net.
Are you sure it wasn't the Minnesota Wild you guys were playing?
Exactly. It was one of those nights where you walk away saying, what just happened? So my seniors are in tears. We're going to the locker room to kind of assess the season, right? We just ended it in upset fashion, and we're very disappointed, right? And I don't know Anthony that well, but I'd worked with him a couple of times. I've been interviewed him by a couple of times. And he's standing down at Aldrich Arena. Right before you get to the locker rooms, there's that little miniature lobby area. And I look at him, and he's kind of got this little grin on his face. And I said, I guess you got your blank analyst. See you next week. I was not happy, right?
Why would you be?
So we go on to do these, I think it ended up being 8 or 10 games. Of the 8 or 10 games we do, all but one goes to overtime. This White Bear team, who was below 500, goes on to upset Hill Murray in the semifinal, who's the number 1 team in the state, in double overtime. And they go on to the section final, and they upset a ranked Roseville team. So this was a story that evolved, and we're doing all these incredible games. We've got chemistry in the booth. He's the straight-laced guy. I'm the goofy guy. We play off each other. So there's something there, right? So we end up doing high school hockey for years together. We did some state tournaments together, including a stint on Channel 9. So years later, it's 2006, and now he's found a really cool spot, right? MSC has turned into FSN. Anthony's the face of the network. He's doing Twins. He's doing it all. And he calls me up and says, I know you're coaching at St. Thomas, but we are down an analyst. They want you to come in and try out for a spot. We can get you 20 to 25 games. We'll work around your coaching schedule at St. Thomas. It's the opening night of the 06 season. So I go in there, and I had seen Sidney Crosby play years before at Shattuck St. Mary's when I was down there to recruit on the women's side the game after this practice. And I saw this kid on the ice, and I'm like, oh my God, who is this?
That is the greatest hockey player I've ever seen.
I had never seen anything like it, honestly. It blew me away. Well, now it's 06, and now he's the first pick in the draft, and he's a rookie for the Penguins. And we're doing this hour-long pregame before the opening night of the season in St. Paul, outdoors at the XL. And they want at the end of the show to get your Stanley Cup prediction. So I'm like, well, I've got inside information here. I saw this guy. He's unbelievable. So I picked the Penguins to not only make the playoffs, and they've been horrible, but they're going to win the cup, and Crosby's going to lift the cup as a rookie. And they all look at me like, is this guy out of his mind? And I was.
You're fired. He can't get this job. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
They finished 31 out of 31 teams, the worst team in the league. I made a complete ass of myself, but I had some good chemistry with LaPanta. We had fun on the show. I got the gig.
And it's only up from there once you make a prediction like that. So what could go wrong?
Thank God 2 years later that Crosby actually got to the cup and lost, and then 3 years later won the cup. So I didn't look quite as much like the town idiot.
You're playing the long game, KG.
Yes.
But I did play the long play, no doubt about it. And the next year they asked me to go more of a full-time spot and be more of a full-time analyst slash reporter slash host. So I had to make that decision. And, you know, I mentioned earlier I've got 3 daughters, 4 now.
Excuse you.
And so I didn't want to leave coaching because I loved it, but this was such a great opportunity. I took a leap of faith, and it worked out. I fell into an unbelievable opportunity. 3 years later, I got hired to do some work in the summer with the Twins, and it's been that way ever since. And so that relationship with LaPanta, as much as I hate to admit it, because we're like the 2 brothers that get along, but we really don't get along. We're polar opposites, like the Odd Couple.
Yes.
But truthfully, without that relationship that started in the 90s when I was still coaching boys high school hockey, and I made that connection with Anthony, and we developed some chemistry doing those high school hockey games for years, I never would have had that chance to get hired by FSN in 06. And now, you know, 14 years later, we're still there. And truthfully, anybody who knows me, and including you two, know how much I look forward to working with the Wild every year. I'm a hockey guy. It's my favorite team in town. And the job just it's a dream gig. And I won't ever forget that time when I got hired, because there was a row of things that had to happen. It was very serendipitous, but I think I was meant to be there, and I think I got lucky at the right time. So it was really cool.
We always ask this of our female guests, but you're a dad yourself. You've got 3 girls. How do you balance the work? I mean, you're on the road with the team, and it's a busy schedule for you. How do you balance that, and how do you and your wife adjust your schedules in order to still be a family man, too?
It's tough. You know, I think I've got 2 girls in college right now, and they're out and they're doing their thing, and it's a lot easier at that level. But my youngest daughter, Annika, is a sophomore in high school, and the first 2 months of the season this year with the Wild, we weren't home more than 2 or 3 days at a time. And so you miss certain things you don't want to miss. I got really lucky. She was in the school play this year. They did Elf, Elf with the movie we've all seen. They did the play version of it. It was spectacular. And it just fell where of the 6 nights they were performing, I could get to 1.
Yeah.
And it was a Friday night, and I got to go. And as a dad, that meant a lot to me. You adjust, they adjust. You know, for the most part, it's worked out fine. But, you know, you live in a world now on social media, and you guys both know this quite well, where I can take the heat. Like, and we all screw up, right? We all, and social media, it's the instant place where they can really throw you under the bus. And I don't mind that because it is live television. The only time I get a little upset, because people will throw the jabs, and it's part of the business, is when my daughter's sitting there like, why this, Dad? Or, what happened here? And you just don't want them to feel bad. I don't care because I get it. I mean, we're all human. We all have good days and bad. Sometimes that stuff gets a little over the top, right? Yeah. And people have their right to their opinion. We're in the public eye. That's the part of the gig. I've had to kind of help Annika adjust when she was littler to where she is now. And it's funny because we'll be walking around in a mall. We'll be at a movie.
Oh, I know this all too well as well. You can't
someone
take this
will
guy
yell
anywhere.
Gorg at the top of their lungs. And in that quick 5 seconds, I have to assess if I actually know that person or if they're just yelling Gorg because they watched The Wild. They went, hey, what's going on? And Annika, when she was little, was like, Daddy, why are people yelling at you?
How do they know you?
No, people are yelling at you, Daddy. So that was fun, and people are great. I was just at one of our youth hockey spotlight games the Wild put on a couple nights ago in Eagan, and Annika went with as kind of my stage manager, and she got to see this incredible crowd. The building was full, Pee-wee game, and then Nordy and her bonded. So Nordy kept coming back to say hi. Breezer, the wild dog, was there. So I got to see Annika play with Breezer and give him some treats, and he followed her around the rink. Those are the nights, as a dad, you really appreciate because Darby Hendrickson and Bob Mason are talking to her and asking her about her high school experience. And, for me, these are 2 Minnesota hockey legends, right? I grew up watching both these guys play high school, college, and pro hockey. And so everybody was so nice to her and so good to her. And you walk out of the rink and she's got this big smile on her face where for 2 hours she's felt really special. And so the nights you miss, nights like that make up for it. And there's always give and take in all of our careers. Yeah. But there's always going to be more good than bad for sure.
Did they play? Did any of the girls play?
They didn't. Annika plays lacrosse. The older 2 were in competitive cheer, but they are not into, they'll watch hockey with me, but they never wanted to play hockey, if that makes sense. Yeah. They enjoy watching more than playing. And
I'm KG's sporty daughter. I like
she's my hockey daughter. We waited to the 4th one, and we finally got a hockey daughter.
Finally got your hockey daughter, yes.
It's so good that way. Thanks, Alexis.
I got you.
I know you do.
Well, and Annika's got a bit of an artsy side to her, right? Because she does theater. And doesn't she do like choir and
she's
other
in
stuff
choir.
like that?
She's in theater. The lacrosse thing, she's never going to be an all-star at that, but she really enjoys something different like that. Yeah. And she's, like the other 2, likes to read. The only thing they do that's just like their dad is they love to go to the movies. And so when the 2 were home from college over the Christmas break, we got 8 days together. And the one's in Florida. My oldest, Katarina's in Florida. And so we got to go to a couple of movies over the holidays. And that's where we're kind of in our element because we sit there and we have our corn, we have our Raisinets, and then we get out and we argue about what we liked best or didn't like about the movie. And we're all movie buffs. And my dad kind of, when I was a kid, that was our activity. Other than going to hockey games, we'd go to movies. And so I've kind of carried that tradition on with Katarina, Madeline, and Annika, and I really enjoy that time in the theater with them.
If there's 2 guarantees I can give you guys about KG, it's that if you go anywhere with him, someone will recognize him. And if you're around him for more than 3 seconds, he will talk about movies. Those are the 2 guarantees that you can always have.
Agreed, yes.
I went to A Star is Born 9 times in the theater last year, and I was
Do
criticized.
you still tear up? I remember last season.
I
feel
get
like
choked
that's a
up when
good
I,
movie.
Bruce Boudreau still holds that against me. He's like, what kind of idiot sees that movie 9 times? And I'm like, Coach, and we argue about movies all the time. You just don't get it. You just don't understand the chemistry and the music. And I grew up with music videos. I'm a child of the 80s.
Yeah.
Music videos were a huge part of my life, and a big part of that movie is it's a big, giant music video. And I will not apologize for seeing that movie 9 times in the theater.
I love the dynamic you and Bruce have when it comes to talking about movies. I see it. I hear about it every morning skate, during practices.
He's hard on
And
me.
yeah, and you kind of told a funny story a couple practices ago about a movie that you guys went to together, and Bruce actually fell asleep and maybe snuck out.
Yeah, so Midway is the movie, and I'm going to tell you,
I want to see that movie.
it's actually a really good, fun popcorn movie where it's not going to win any awards. The acting is borderline cheesy, but
Wait, should we see this movie or not?
you
Yeah, right?
absolutely should, because it's 2 hours and 15 minutes of pure eye candy. It's great entertainment, right? The special effects, the story, it's very powerful. So we go to the movie. Dan Myers, Boudreau, and myself.
What a squad.
I know,
So
right?
he sits a couple
Trouble.
rows behind us because we're too close. We're sitting too close. Okay, fine. So all of a sudden, about an hour into it, we look back and he's snoring. I'm like, what in the world? So I kind of, hey, because there's nobody else in the theater. Hey, Coach. Oh, he's back up and awake. So we get entrenched into the final 45 minutes of the movie because that's where the whole story kind of culminates and it's all coming together. So we get up and we're excited to talk to Bruce about the experience. We look back and he's gone. He just left. It's a good
ghosts
movie.
you guys.
He just vanished. And so we never agree. And I'm trying to, I've been asking for this for a couple of years now. I want to sit down with him here as the second half of the season unfolds and do a quick little movie thing. We can talk old school sports movies. We can talk.
Because he knows a
favorite
thing
movies.
or two about old school sports movies being a
Well,
being a
they used
guy
his
in a
apartment
movie. Yeah, right.
in the movie Slapshot. So, I mean, Reg Dunlop, the coach of that team, lived in Boudreau's apartment because they asked for, of all the players here, who's got the messiest place? Well, obviously it's Bruce. So his apartment was used in that movie, and it's a cool story. And he is a movie guy, though. He'll go to, like me, 2 or 3 movies a week. So I'm going to try to get it done. If I can be on again with you guys, I'll let you know how it goes.
Yes,
But
please.
if you ever need a movie recommendation, anybody out there listening, just give me a quick little bump on Twitter, and I'm happy to do it. A lot of times I'll send out my reviews, and a lot of people will agree. Some will disagree. But there aren't many of the main ones that are out there that I haven't seen, and I'm honest. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. I didn't like Uncut Gems. Our producer Fred and I talked about this. I don't leave movies early often. I left that one early. I couldn't stand it. I'm sorry. And even though I love Adam Sandler and I love Kevin Garnett, I didn't care for the movie. Most of the movies I've seen in the last couple of months have been unbelievably good. That one, I can't recommend. There you
Guess
have
I
it.
won't be seeing that anytime soon.
No, you
No,
won't.
don't add that to my list.
No,
guess not.
skip that one.
Skip that one. Give that one a hard pass.
Definitely give it a hard pass.
Before we let you go, we want to bring it back into the Wild. What are your predictions for the rest of the season here? What do they need to do to get into the playoffs and to go far in the playoffs? It's been kind of a struggle for them when they do make that postseason play.
Yeah, they've given us a couple of teases this year where you get out of the gate slow, the schedule was brutal, and you kind of feel like, ooh, it's going to be tough, right? Then they have these runs where you start to see the young players take these steps. I've been super impressed with Luke Cunnan and Kevin Fiala. They've taken noticeable steps this year. And if this team was going to be a playoff team this year, that core of young players had to rise together. My prediction is this. If they can get on a run between now and the end of the year where they win 6 or 7 in a row, they're going to be right where they need to be. Bruce made the point in Calgary after the game in our post-game presser. Every team the Wild are chasing right now has had one of those runs. You have to have a lengthy win streak to get it done. Jason Zucker is far ahead of the 4 to 6 weeks he was scheduled to miss. He is a big-time needle mover for me with the offense of this hockey team. It's a team that just had 40-plus shots at Calgary and scored 1 goal. He will make a difference when he comes back. He'll be good for the power play. He'll be good for this team on the top 6 when it comes to those front 2 lines that have to score. they've had a lot of adversity with the Dubnik situation. They've had injuries to players like Zucker and Mikko Koivu and Jared Spurgeon. If they can stay healthy and they can have just one of those runs, this team is good enough to be up. I look at the teams that they're chasing, including Calgary last night. The Wild, to me, can compete with those teams. Now, if you ask me on the flip side, of the Bostons out there, the Tampas, and the Colorados, there's another step they'll need to take. But right now, they don't need to worry about that. If St. Louis proved anything to us last year is you just need to get in the top 8 and get hot at the right time and have a hot goalie. They did that. They won the cup. It was phenomenal. Right now, with the young core they have, with some of the high-end talent they have on this team, I know Matt Dumba.
I was going to say, what about Dumba? I've been
He will have a better second half than first half. And if you watch the game in Calgary and saw how much more noticeable he was on the good side in that game, he finally looked like Matt Dumba from last year. He hadn't all year. And he'd be the first to admit it.
He was taking more chances than usual.
Eventually, that puck's
he got his mojo back.
Yeah.
Now, the puck didn't go in, but he fired 11 shots at the net. He had 3 grade A chances. He's another guy that, 3 goals in the first half of the year. You can put him on double-digit goals in the second half and think how much better that power play is going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Jason Zucker comes back. They stay healthy on the back end. Devin Dubnyk hopefully gets some stability with Jen, his wife, and some stability at home so he can be with the team on a full-time basis and get some traction for his season. There are reasons to believe they can do it, but let's be honest. They're 7 points out right now. They're in a tough spot, and we're into the second half. The next 3 weeks will dictate whether this team will be a playoff team or will have no shot. They've got 11 of their next 12 at home. They've been noticeably better this year in St. Paul, like they always have been, except for last year. You win 7 or 8 of these games of the next 12, you're going to be in a pretty good spot to be in the running when when the season gets into the stretch run. This next 3-week period is critical for this hockey club.
And if they figure out division play, right? Because that's another struggle that they've had this season is playing division opponents.
They got tough opponents, too.
Yeah,
they do.
Exactly.
And let's not forget that they started with 7 of their first 8 on the road, multiple games within the division. They weren't playing very well out of the gate, and they put themselves in a bad spot. They have some home games now where those division teams are coming back to St. Paul. And you have to hope now that they can, because you have to be at least 500 in your division. I think right now they're like 3-8-2. They've got to be 5 games above 500 here the rest of the way, which isn't going to be easy because you still have games with Colorado. You still have games with Nashville, who figures to be better in the second half than they've been so far. You think about Dallas. You think about there's no easy game in the Central Division, but the Wild are capable, especially at home, of turning that number around, and they're going to have to if they're going to be a playoff team.
Right. Well, we'll be watching along with you, Kevin. We'll be watching you, in fact. That's probably a big part of it.
KG fan club.
KGS, exactly.
I'm no Marcus Foligno, I'll admit to that, but I appreciate the love, ladies. That's awesome.
No, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. You were a supporter of this before it was even a thing.
I'm
so
a big
we
fan,
appreciate
ladies.
that. I love
really
it.
am excited about being on this show and what you guys are doing and being the father of 4 daughters. I'm all about girl power, and this show is really empowering women, not only in broadcasting, but more importantly in hockey.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible show. And I love where we're just getting started here. I love where this show is going. And you two are just a great combo to make this thing go and to elevate. And it's going to be great for the game as well.
Well, we appreciate you, KG. We'll have you back on at some point.
I would love it.
All right. Thanks again, Kevin Gorg, joining us. We'll be right back.
And we are back now for our final segment, our State of Hockey Snapshot. Jessi, Hockey Day in Minnesota is all about highlighting the city of Minneapolis and hockey in the inner city. So I know you've done some work with Dinomites, which has a heavy hand in sharing the game with everyone around Minneapolis year-round. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I love Dinomites program. I've been lucky enough to volunteer with the Greg Carroll Learn to Skate for the past couple springs here, getting on the ice with some kids, getting them all geared up. It's just a fantastic program that's really exposing kids in the inner city to the game. Not only do they focus on introducing hockey to these young players and the families by providing the equipment, providing the ice time, all of that free of cost, but they really focus on the education portion too. They've increased the graduation rates at Minneapolis schools based on using the game of hockey to leverage that. They have tutors available. They started out in Minneapolis and have recently expanded to St. Paul too. So I'm sure plenty of you guys have maybe seen them up at Tria. They take up a lot of ice time at Tria rink. So it's an amazing program. There's some really cool, so many different storylines actually. I'll be covering a few of those in an athletic article that will debut on Hockey Day here on Saturday. So be sure to check that out. I'll tweet that link out. But yeah, it's a really great program. I know, Alexis, you're going to come out there this spring with me, I think, right?
Yes,
And get on
I
the
hope
ice with some
so.
kids.
Yeah, that would be fun. I mean, there's a reason that Minnesota is the state of hockey, and it's things like this because Minnesota goes the extra mile to do these things and find these opportunities for these kids. And it's a big reason why there's such a big outpouring of talented hockey players that get to the college level, the NHL level, because of things like this. And I just think it's so cool. I love hearing these kind of stories. So we'll wrap things up there. So thanks again to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub for hosting this week's roaming studio, which is keeps things
You'll
fun.
never
We're
know
always
where we
somewhere
are.
new. A big hug and a thank you to our guest Kevin Gorg and our presenting sponsor Soda Stick and our producer Fred. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Fred.